All right. Welcome back, everyone. Happy Friday.
Happy
Ooh,
Friday.
Al, it's been quite the week, hasn't it?
It has. Lots of stuff going on this week. But we could say that about pretty much every week, 2025, right?
Should we just get it out of the way and just say maybe we live in interesting times?
Yeah, we live in interesting times.
Oh, goodness gracious. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. It is, wow. Uh, I'm actually kind of scared the month of July is already gone. Oof, that's just kind
Yeah.
of scary in itself. But welcome everyone to the podcast. That's Al. I'm Josh. And each week we get online and we have a little fun on the conversations of what's happening here in the world of cybersecurity, operational security, uh, physical security, and public safety, and all wrapped in around risk management. So we have a lot to fun of this every week. And wow, Al, what are we talking about this week?
Yeah, so we're going to get into pretty deep on the cyber side here, which is good because we haven't talked too much cyber because of events that have occurred over the last few weeks. But um, real big thing, I think, something that's been kind of been happening in the background, and really impacts all of us quite a bit is ransomware attacks. And then we're also looking at there's obviously been an increase in that, and that has been a persistent threat for quite some time. And it's showing no signs of going anywhere, unfortunately. And then how does an organization deal with ransomware, data hijacking, and just for the uninitiated, what is ransomware? Kind of a quick background here. Well, it's malicious scripts, either um, surreptitiously put into your system, or involuntarily, a user accesses the site, or a piece of information, an email or something, and gets basically some type of malicious program on their system, either cloud system or home network, uh, home desktop, laptop, what have you, even the phone, and you get locked out of your system, you get your data stolen, and the um, what's the proper term here? I'm sorry, I'm losing it today. The threat actors, there we go, essentially tell you have to pay a sum of money, or you have to do something for them in order to get access back to your system, get access back to your data, right? Now, for very obvious reasons, this is concerning, but and this is not a new threat. This has been happening for quite some time, but yeah, I think the big question today is to pay or not to pay, right? Do you pay? Do you pay the ransom? Do you uh, bring in external resources or internal resources and try to gain access back without having to pay the system, and then or pay the actors? And then there's the even if you do get access back to your system, right? Your data is still out there in the wild. So how do you mitigate that, right? You know, how do we prevent this? Two, how do we address it if it does happen to us? And then three, what's the follow up after the fact, right? Who do we have to inform? Who do we have to let know that data is out there in the wild? So that's where we're gonna start. We never know where we're gonna end up when we do these. So yeah,
And,
it's all
and
good.
let me just say the industry definition that you cited just now. Um, I respectfully disagree with that industry definition of what ransomware is. It is probably the most um, downplayed definition possible that the industry uses. Uh, let's just be honest. What ransomware is? Ransomware is extortion. It is someone doing an unauthorized red team on your network or pen test. I usually go pen test, but red team, whichever one, whatever definition you want to use is fine. It is an unauthorized red team event uh, that you pay after the fact, not before the fact.
Yeah, they're assessing your system security for with payment in arrears, right?
Exactly. And they're forcing the payment, that they're
Yeah.
holding that
Yeah.
gun to your head saying, pay me. And, not often, it's a 50-50 chance if they give you back your stuff, or 50-50% chance that what they did to hold your systems hostage and pointing that gun at you is going to, decrypt successfully. And even then it takes time to recover then too. So needless to say, yeah, I don't agree with that definition. I think we need to call it what it is. The ransomware is not the problem. It is actually the outcome. The problem is you have a human or humans coming and storming through your network and then testing your network for you, and then they just lock it up for you and then say, pay me. That's exactly what it is in my book.
I don't disagree with you. I think yeah, it's just another form of extortion. It's kind of like express kidnappings, right? It's they call it an express kidnapping, but it's really an extortion, right? It's a disinformation campaign coupled with extortion, right?
Yeah.
So, but ransomware does sound pretty cool. So, it's a buzzword. People like to throw it around there, but to your point, right? It means different things to different people, and different organizations. And I think we have to be very clear about, um, how we define things, especially threats, because one of the, and it was interesting because last night I was at a CTO dinner, where we were talking about a lot of these topics, and there was an interesting comment made regarding how do you stop this type of activity, right? And one of the big things was, well, when we call it ransomware or we call it a cyber threat, we're automatically kind of relegating it to one office. When the reality is, it's everyone's responsibility, right? Everyone has to be responsible for protecting the network. Everyone has to be diligent, and vigilant when it comes to, two-fact, password security, access, understanding, what the threat vectors are. And so, I think a lot of time, that was an interesting comment by one of the CTOs of just like, I wish people wouldn't just assume that my office handles all of this and handles all that. Like it's a community effort to police these things and prevent these things from happening. So, um, I think when we rephrase things and say, yeah, well, we don't, the, we don't want the company to be extorted. All of a sudden, everyone starts paying attention, right? Um, and I mean, so if you don't mind, Josh, like walk us through kind of like the steps of this, right? Like just kind of give the audience a little bit of a, how does this all break down? How does this typically happen? And this is definitely your realm. But from soup to nuts, how does this kind of go down? And then what are the implications to the business?
So let's just start, being absolutely clear about this. Ransomware is not an individual in some underground basement under their mom's house doing some dark arts and getting into your system and then pointing your gun. It is not that. You have to look at ransomware as organized crime spread across multiple crime families. Everyone has their specialty. So think, when prohibition or, anything that is illicit and illegal, um, the mafia, for example, everyone actually has a certain specialty. Some has great relationships with law enforcement. Some are good developers. Some are good, shippers, deliverers. Everyone has their specialties. Same thing applies, back when with prohibition, someone knew the cops, someone knew how to make the alcohol, someone knew how to do the runs for it, someone knew the timings, someone knew the packaging, whatever. Everyone has that specialty there. Everyone has their specialty in um in the world of ransomware or crimeware. The thing to keep in mind, though, is how it happens. It happens through this mass distribution. Everyone has a certain specialty. So there's a group basically are just focused on gaining access to your onto your computer or your network. We call those initial access brokers, and then they spend a lot of time capturing really quick information, just small bits here, and then they sort things out. Are you Windows? Are you Mac? Are you Linux? What type of defenses you have? Are you a small business, medium business, large business? Are you healthcare? Are you, government? Whatever. They do all those little sortings and everything out. And then, what you don't see in the back is then they pass on, these to various groups. Kind of like a manufacturing process. Like, hey, it's a more finished good. All right, it goes over here to this group. Oh, it's an unfinished group. Okay, unfinished product will go over here, and then it'll shunt back over to that other group. So it keeps playing cards, or you're just trading cards basically back and forth between various groups. So if you have like reasonable defenses like a CrowdStrike or Sentinel-1 or a Cylance or a Microsoft, the Advanced Defender, and they see it and then they don't have full access to it, it's like, all right, great, we'll send it over to one of these specialists whose sole goal is to systematically take down these applications so that they can deploy the ransomware. If you're foolish enough to be running your computer as admin, say, hey, we have full admin here. Cool. Send it over to this group. They'll lock it down. We'll take our cut, like 50, 20%. And then it just keeps dividing and just going through this tumbling refining process to the end where they just ransom it out. Certain groups will have certain specialties, like, they want to target more healthcare. Other groups might want to target more education. Other guys might target more financial, whomever it might be. There is always a specialty for every group. And then they just split the cash. Like, someone specializes in collections and payments and just pass it back. Someone who specializes in developing the ransomware itself. It is a whole business aspect of it. Someone literally legitimately just builds a software. They're not the one who deploys it. In fact, if you want to see how much of a business this is, I was at a meeting many years ago. This is just to show you how bad of a problem it is. This is before COVID. Um, the industry that makes up ransomware has money back guarantees. They guarantee a return on investment, but more importantly, they also guarantee if we get caught by a certain detection software, they will rewrite the entire program for you for free. It's not your fault. Oh, it's ours. We'll rewrite it for you. So consequently, that's what happens. It's a whole business, and it's not just a small business like one, two, or five people. Sometimes these are just small little small businesses that have learned to work together, and they've been able to leverage that relationship at arm's length, we'll say, and then go at it. And then they dissolve and they reform and dissolve and reform. But, ultimately it's that relationship that they keep coming back in various shapes and forms, and they just keep going all over the place. And it, let's just be honest, it is a bit of a crime of chance. But do you want to play that, that Russian roulette when it actually lands on you and it hits you? It probably not a good idea.
And these are a lot of times multinational groups, right? So you have, like you mentioned, you have one portion of this organization based in country A, and then you have another part based in country B. And a lot of times that's because laws in certain jurisdictions allow one thing and other places allow another thing. And so it's easy to operate in different countries. And then with the interconnectivity of the internet, right? I mean, we can still have, real-time conversations, or we can still do brokerage across borders very easily, right? And so this becomes a really challenging problem for law enforcement, because a lot of times you can't, either federal law enforcement or even local law enforcement, just doesn't have the ability to really stop one part of the operation in a certain country because we either don't have jurisdiction there, we don't have good relationships with that country, or that law enforcement in that country just doesn't prioritize the issue or just aren't equipped to handle it. Sometimes, unfortunately, sometimes law enforcement's even involved in the operation. They're being paid out, they're being bribed, so they're actually enabling the activity, right? And so it makes it really difficult to really tamp down on this. And then to your point as well, is like these groups are very good about once they've been shut down, they can easily, you know, either reform or sprout up somewhere else with minimal barriers, right? So it almost becomes like playing whack-a-mole. You may get one group, but even if you prevent them or you recover data from that one group, I mean, they can, disband and sprout up somewhere else as something else. So, it's a really challenging problem. Um, you know, how does an organization defend against this? I mean, what in your professional opinion, what's if there was three things that they could do to, you know, tamp down on this or at least reduce the risk, right? What would those things be?
So the first one I would say is get an authorized pen test first.
Yeah, I
Mainly
totally agree.
start, independently go, okay, what happens if a bad guy gets in the network? What could possibly go wrong? You need to answer that question. If you can't answer that question, you're pretty much in bad shape in my book. You have to be able to answer with confidence what could possibly go wrong. And then from there start moving that line and needle to say, okay, we understand what the risks are, what could go wrong, what is my exposure, what are my assets. For all you have a server in the corner that was decommissioned 10 years ago, but the guy left before he unplugged the power, so it's been sitting there, idling. No one's been fixing it, no one has the password. That is a total possibility. I've seen that several times actually. Unpatched system sitting in a corner, people forgot about it, just lost, all due to time. Um, the next one is based on the risk-driven approach, like that pen test report. And by the way, if you find someone who claims to do 100% automated pen test, run. Like really run, like as fast as you can run away. There is no such thing as 100% automated pen test out there. And even
Why
if
why do you believe the automated pen tests are just a disaster? What's the take there?
because you are trying to match wits based on a human programmed uh, piece of code, that's always going to have limitations. It's always going to have a very, very tight scope. Don't get me wrong, it's great. I mean, I'll be very honest, we use a lot of automated tools, but the automated tools is no substitute for human ingenuity, human
Yeah, you
creativity.
you backstop with a human there, right? So you may apply the tool to save some time or to knock out, routine tasks that you would do on a pen test, right? But you still backstop with the human because at the end of the day, you're dealing with other humans on the other side of that coin who, to your point, are they're thinking, we'll use the term, military term, of a live thinking enemy, which means they will change how they operate. They will change, the X factor is the change, is the human, right? That's what you're trying to defend against. So
Exactly.
you have to to battle humans, you have to have humans, right? You have to have humans there to think, like the enemy, and I'd say in this case the adversary,
Yeah.
think like the adversary, and it's a chess game, right? So if you just run a chess playbook, you might win 60% of the time, but you still got a 40% loss rate, right? So you have to be able to adapt. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry. Just wanted to
No
highlight that
worries.
point
Yeah.
further.
The thing I have is that, with some people trying to purport that they have an automated pen test or AI driven pen test and these things, it's a human under a machine driven, is that it really is just a very limited scope of what they programmed into the system. It doesn't adapt for custom systems. It doesn't adapt for certain business outcomes. It doesn't adapt to maybe what you see in the network. That's where the human creativity goes. Can I do X plus Y plus Z? Bring everything together in such a fashion or way where it actually enables you to actually get your end goal, which is to control all your IT assets. Um, and that's a huge thing is we have to take that risk. So we have to look at it from that human lens, because I've done pen tests before where like one of our very first pen tests at my firm, we've always looked sorry, it was very funny in our books, but a major accounting firm, I know, I'm not gonna say who, but is one of the big eight slash big four, did the pen test the year before, and they gave a clean bill of health to this bank. And then we came in the next year. We were brought in. We were brought in by another firm to help it assist, and we didn't give a clean bill of health. In fact, it was actually very bad because we actually compromised the network. And it turned out when we started looking back at the documentation, all they did was they ran a tool, and the tool didn't capture the human element. We figured it out by going through that process, slowly working through it, and then we finally got the domain password, and then at that point we checked it. We compromised the entire network, going from one end to the other.
You bring up a good point on the human element. Like, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would venture to guess that ransomware attacks, like probably north of 90% are human triggered, right? Uh, I would imagine. Again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but from what I've heard and what I've seen, it really is a human initiated event most of the time. Um,
Just
and
carelessness sometimes too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, given that humans tend to be the X factor here, either on the victim side or the attacker side, right? The automated tooling, and from what I've seen, the automated tooling, it's good at running scenarios on past events, things that have already occurred that we have data on, but it can't really close the gap on things that we don't know, right? And that's really where that human, almost pays for itself, right? Because to your point, right? Like, you bring in a team and they give you a clean bill of health and you're going to pay them some money and they just ran an automated tool set, right? You believe as a business that you're operating in a secure environment, right? But you're not. Your data gets hijacked. Your business operations are disrupted. You're now paying probably 5 to 10x more cleaning up the spill, than you were to just hire a firm that would have done it properly the first time.
Yeah. And I think the other issue I always have is that um the mindset is it's me, myself, and I on the internet. And that bothers me, tremendously, because as you're talking about it, it isn't just a crime of humans. It's also a crime of usually opportunity. You're setting yourself up for that. So, for example, um, you leaving your car keys inside an unlocked car. And granted, I know that this is, you might be going, oh, in my part of the world, I can do that and everything. No one will ever steal my car. But that's kind of my point, though, is no one has stolen your car yet. And the keyword is yet. Because, you're in the middle of nowhere. So, the chances of that, the risk goes down, completely much lower. But,
But there's still
it's
a
not
risk.
saying it's
There's
still a
still a risk.
risk.
Still a
And
risk.
you're just waiting for some opportune time for someone to walk in and poof, take your car because you left your car keys in ignition and everything. sorry, he's like, you can't hide behind the fact that, oh, it's never happened before, or oh, like, I thought this was a safe place. No, it's an invitation at that point. You left your car keys in the car. And same thing, applies when it comes to cybersecurity. It is just that one moment of weakness that they get you, a moment of laziness, a moment of carelessness, a moment of tiredness, whatever, and then poof, it just they get in, and some of these incidents that are happening are not because of anything you did wrong on a day to day basis at your company, but it may be what another company has did wrong, which compromised you because you were careless. And it goes back to the central theme. It is not just one little small thing that typically gets you. It's a series of small little things, typically harmless, that just aligns perfectly, and then you have an incident. So, like for example, if your issue is you reuse the same username and password everywhere across every website, and you might be 50 characters, let's say, good for you. But the problem is you're reusing the same username and password. But what happens, a website that you happen to be using is not properly storing that password on the back end. So rather than salting, hashing, and peppering the password, or storing it in a very encrypted. Technically, I hate using that word encrypted. Technically, it's hashed, but for the layman, it's storing the password not in a human readable format. Um, and this website, the developers were absolutely lazy, and they still stored it in a human readable format. Then there goes it, your security. All they have right is your username right there, or your email, and typically that's your username and then a password, and then voila, they just need to pass it around like you got a password, and you got a password, and you got a password, and they log in. Again, you didn't do anything wrong other than use the common bad password. But because another website got compromised or another app got compromised, they were able to take the password and then pass it around. Then voila, you have the abilities right there to get into all rest of your life right there. And there's nothing stopping that adversary from getting in.
Right. Yeah, and this is where this gets real intense, right? Because there's a lot of apps that are interconnected via APIs. And
I
a
mean, just
lot of
forget
times,
don't even forget the apps, like the APIs. That's usually one of the advanced side. I'm just thinking like, how easy it is for someone just to create an app and then just, create a username and password and a small little database to store stuff in the back on some server on Amazon.
yeah. I mean, it's super easy to do this, which I think is why it's so prevalent as well, right? Um, but as from a business perspective, I mean, businesses are investing quite a bit in different platforms, different applications. You know, as we layer on more and more interconnectivity, either via API or just enterprise use, enterprise platforming that people need, we increase the chances, right, of an event because we have more and more potential vectors, right? Because we have more data going in and out of different things. We have more, and then we have, companies that are scaling, right? So you have more and more people. Offshoring, nearshoring is a thing as well. So now you're dealing with people in other countries, other networks, and it becomes very, very complicated very quickly. And again, to your point, is you could have done everything correctly as an individual user, and you still get impacted because the lowest common denominator, did not do what they were supposed to do, and now your data is out there. Um, Now, I guess this comes up to the next point, the next kind of topic that we were going to discuss is okay. So your data is now out there, right? Either as an organization or an individual, your data is out there. It's out on in the wild. People can access it. People are actively trying to leverage your data to do stuff, right? And we could probably do a whole podcast on what people can do with your data, like all the bad things that can be done. But I'll gloss over that for now, just for time's sake. But typically, you're going to get a ransom now, right? They want to ransom your data. Typically, organizations they want to get a bigger payout, right? So it's like, hey, um, we'll sell you back your data and we'll sell you back access to your system. I'm just going to throw an arbitrary number out. We want $10 million, and then we'll give you what you want. We'll give everything back, right? What is your take? Cybersecurity professional, you say, I'm a business, I've been hacked, I don't have access to my system, I've been locked out. I go to you, I say, hey, they want $10 million. Should I pay it or what should I do?
So, um, this is my position. Okay. It's a business decision.
Yeah,
It's very much a business.
totally.
It is not having to do right or wrong. It's a purely business decision at this point. Let me explain the business decision for you. Okay. Number one, uh, if you don't take care of the root cause of all the problems, you become a boomerang customer. As in, you come back, we get things fixed, you go away, and then you come back, and you go away, and you keep coming back. It's usually about 3 or 4 times this happens that finally, people, finally have a coming to Jesus moment, and they used to say, okay, what are we doing wrong here? Um, paying, 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 paying. Okay, over and over and over and over again. All you're telling people by the way, these groups talk. Okay, so it's not uncommon, to see an occasional or sometimes multiple groups piggybacking upon each other. So it's kind of like a nested Pushkin doll, like, the dolls with the doll within a doll within a doll within a doll. So they just keep adding their encryption wrapper on top of that. So you keep having to go through layer after layer after layer. Um, you, when you're in one of those situations, you're just amplifying the pain because you've paid. They know you're going to pay. They're going to keep coming back to you because it's basically a classic. If you give a mouse a cookie, it's going to want a glass of milk. Except in this case, it's not a mouse. He's going to bring all his friends and family over because he knows there's a food source right here. Think how communal everything here is in the world. Number two, paying honestly enables them boldness to continue and it funds their activities.
Yeah.
Remember, this is a business driven, this is a business for them. This is a operations. They have probably healthcare. They have heck, they have a phone number and help desk for them for you can call and troubleshoot and everything. They have those services as part of it. Uh, but my point here is because you've paid them, you now fund their operation for God knows how long, and then they'll keep going back for more because it's kind of like that adrenaline hit, just going over and over and over again. And they're just keeping those hits, and then they get rewarded for it, and then so you're creating this feedback cycle in the human brain. Keep doing it over and over again. They keep getting money. That's the whole reward process that goes in. Think the dog when you ring the bell or whatever do. They hear that sound and they get a treat. It is ingrained with them because it's rewarded. Um, and so my personal take here as a business decision is it's not about the response to the ransomware. Your response should have been in the first place. How do I prevent this? How do I protect myself against this? This should have been thought about 6 to 9 months ago prior to an incident. Going in and saying it will never happen to me or it's, we're too small. That is what we call denial. Quite literally living in Egypt on the river Nile in denial. It's going to happen. The question is just when, not if. And once you get that in through your head and you accept that you are a target, you have something of value like money, your behavior starts changing. And then you start making some very critical, crucial decisions to minimize or reduce that risk. And that's the big thing is you have to understand you can't do it after, you don't want to be after the fact because don't get me wrong, you didn't fix things in the first place, you're gonna have to fix things afterwards, and it's gonna cost you 40 times more. And by the way, you still have to fix it anyway. So why are you adding this like unnecessary complexity to your life? Um, Second, I'll be the first person to say if you did not prepare and you had to pay, I don't like it, but I also understand. This is why I say it's a business decision. It's because you have to figure out in your situation or scenario if you should pay. And if you do pay, there is always two forks in the road. Number one, you assume that there's honor among thieves, and there may not be honor among thieves. If anything, there may be dishonor among thieves too as well. So you pay and they disappear, so they never give you the ransomware key. Second one, you assume they did things right. So they could have ransomed everything and whatnot, but for some strange reason, the ransom didn't happen or deploy correctly, or they never, for whatever reason, it ran into a snag. Well, then you still have to restore from backups anyway, and then so poof, great. Now you paid, you're out of money, and you're still having to restore from backups, and that's another that typically is about a 3 to 4 week process unto itself. So,
Yep.
at the end of the day, paying is an assumption that you will get back your operations very quickly. And that is not always the case. Will it work? Will it not work? If I pay, will they give my stuff back? I don't know. You're dealing with a lot of infinitesimal situations, scenarios that could or could not happen one way or another. Could work in your favor, and could be worst case scenarios. And I've seen those worst case scenarios where people have paid, they've gotten out the keys, or they've paid and they've didn't get their data back because the data was improperly encrypted. So they have to do the manual process of restoration. Very time consuming, very expensive, very painful.
Now
Um,
I've seen also where they'll give you access back to your system, but it's delayed access, so it's like 48 hours you get access back, and then within that, let's assume it's been a 96-hour period from incident to recovery, right? In that 48 hours, they've sold portions of your data to other brokers, right? Um, and those brokers are now doing things with your data, right? Whether releasing it to the public, if it's compromising emails or whatever. And so there's a lot that can occur between the time you actually get access back to your data and to your system, and from the time that you actually from when the incident actually occurred, from the initial incident. And to your point about this being a business, right? These groups typically, they're in this to get a payout. So if another group is going to pay them money for the data, like, they're going to sell it. I mean, I would say it's the path of least resistance for a lot of these criminal elements of, well, what's going to make me the quickest buck? And if I can hand this data off or this access off to someone else, and they'll pay me, even if it's a fraction of what I was trying to extort out of you, well, I'll take it and move on to the next thing, right? Um,
I would say even go one step further. Apply the lens of a typical business in corporate America. I think it's what Milton's theorem or theory, which was you were trying to maximize value or to the shareholders. I would say apply that same logic, except maximize value to these criminal organizations.
right. Works
And
both ways.
yeah, exactly. And or their stakeholders, um, whomever that might be. But the same attack or same process, they still have finite resources. They still have finite um, financials, people, talent, time. They still have finite. So what they are going to do is they're going to do everything possible in every quote unquote engagement, every attack, and think how can they maximize the revenue possibilities from a single successful attack. Is there a single way to take, that $1 million, extortion attempt, and somehow make it $100 million extortion attempt? What can I do using the same sets of data and course of actions to maximize my profits and revenue? And so stealing data is one thing and selling you a key is one thing, but they can always come back and say, hey, if you don't pay me, we'll release this data on the net. Or my friend Briggs and I, in South by Southwest in 2018, we said, while we're for GDPR, and in all these privacy legislations, we've now essentially put a target dollar amount on, these on businesses, because of the amount is like, I think 1 or 2, if I remember correct, 1 or 2% of your global income. And
Right.
so, consequently, you've put now a value or target. So all these businesses, if they get compromised, these bad guys can go, hey, if you don't do X, we're going to report you. Whoops. And so, what they do is this, let's just say it's the fine is $2 million. All right. We promise not to say anything if you pay us 1.9 million.
Right. Yeah, and this is kind of a consequence of legislation now, right? Is where we could argue it good or bad either way, right? I think this is something that businesses and governments still have to figure out, but legislation has essentially made it mandatory now for businesses. When you have a breach, you have to inform the users that your information was potentially lost, right? Now, yes, everyone should know. I agree with the fact that, like, if your data is out there, your personal data is out there, you should be informed that your data is now in the wild, and you should be able to take protective action 100%. But the issue with this is some of these reporting times are within 24 hours, 48 hours, depending on the legislation, right? A lot of times, some of these organizations can't even they don't even have a handle of the situation yet, right? And so, you know, by putting that, regulation in place, the businesses now has to look at, okay, am I going to eat the fine? Am I going to pay the ransom? How am I going to address this, right? You're going to get squeezed from both sides essentially. And so a lot of times it's like, well, to your point, I'll just pay the 1.9 to the ransom group so I don't have to inform anyone that this actually happened, because the brand damage aspect of this is a situation too. And to your earlier point about a thinking human on the other side of the coin, this is why it's important to have humans involved in this process, because that's an adaptation to, legislation, how these groups have shifted their kind of modus operandi to fit in that and still get the payout, right? So I think it's an interesting chess game, cat and mouse game, right? Between the bad guys and the businesses to try to make all this, protect everyone and keep everything moving smoothly. Um, but yeah,
And
I mean, it's a big problem. So
and just keep thinking, going down the rabbit hole, like, what can I do to maximize my revenue? So they could, threaten to report you, threaten to leak it out to the media, threaten to sell it. And then, there's multiple revenue streams right there. And then afterwards, you see a so-called deletion, but 6 months later they still, oh, I have a copy here. All right, let's just put it on the dark web and just sell it there too as well.
the
So
way
they've got.
and what's really dangerous about a lot of this stuff is, they still have your data, even though they gave you, the access back. They're more. more often than not, they have created a backup of the data that they've stolen, and they sit on it. And what I've seen in certain cases is they have data, the data's been brokered, right? So it's on a site where you can download, you can pull stuff, right? Um, and then something happens with the company or a personality in the company where, you know, we have information on a certain individual who now has acquired a lot of wealth, right? And or I have data on a person who's a public personality, like a Hollywood star or a politician, and all of a sudden I have data that's 6 months old, but I'm able to look through it and be, hey, wait a second, I've got very embarrassing information about an individual who's now, potentially a public figure, and I'm going to release it, right? And big one that comes to mind is the Ashley Madison thing. Ashley Madison in general was just a terrible concept, and I think they invited the scrutiny that they got, but when they got hacked, I mean, the can of worms was really open, and you want to talk about people who didn't want that data out in the wild. Um, you know, say what you want about Ashley Madison as a business concept, but when we look at it from just the business and data retention and data hijacking and all that, that was a really bad one, and a lot of people got embarrassed because of that. And I would argue rightly so. They probably, if you're married, you probably shouldn't be on a dating app like that, right? That was probably not the smartest decision of anyone. No judgment for me, but still, got to call stupid when you see stupid, right? That was pretty stupid. So, but we can see the implications there of, right, politicians, public figures, a lot of people's reputations were completely damaged by that. And you could argue rightly so, but this is the kind of, if we take that, we look at, like, okay, medical information, HIPAA information, right, that gets out there. Um, there could be cause for embarrassment there. Nobody wants their personal information out in the wild, right? So um, it's important to understand all the full implications here of, the data is still out there and it could still be leveraged in the future for more money, for other things, right? Not just regaining access to a system. So, you think about the emails, you think about work conversations, you think about, um, somebody who may have worked somewhere 5 years ago, now they're running for public office, right? And then now there's information about this individual out there that's coming out, could shape a campaign, should a lot of different implications here. Could shape who invests in what, right? Um,
I think the thing is to remember is, you know, if you adopt the mantra and thought process that you are already hacked or seconds away from being hacked or compromised, it really changes and really makes you think about your behavior, and modifies it in such a way to say it's gonna, it's inevitable. You accept it, and then you just prepare for it. So this way, all you're trying to do is reducing, if not minimizing, the overall impact when and if it does actually happen. When you start making that presumption, you really start changing your behavior. And that's what I've been doing a lot is, I presume every website I sign up for is going to get compromised. So they get a random password. If it's a site I don't really care about and I'm too lazy to open a password manager, sure, I'll just use a throwaway password or common, password. I will be very honest. I do have a couple websites that still use a password that I've had for a while, but I don't care if I lose the account because it doesn't impact me. All I'm doing is just reading on the website, and just looking at stuff. I don't even comment. If I lose the access, big whoop. Doesn't impact me. But then there are other things in my life that actually are financial related, and I don't even have a uniform password. I generate all unique passwords for that. So getting into my financials is not impossible, but it's most definitely much harder given the fact that it's just so distributed among the different financial institutions. And so, me thinking about how other websites may not be doing their due diligence has actually forced a modification in my behavior. And that has forced me to choose, everything reasonably possible to actually protect myself on those sites. And, I assume the data that's being stored in there is going to get taken. And so that means I just force myself to limit, what I want on there as much as I can. And I can't, scrub everything, but I most certainly can do my best to minimize, what I'm freely giving away out to people, and assuming that they're taking care of it. And I use this word "assume" a lot here, and it's because I keep thinking about, I don't know, was it Carol Burnett or which comedian I forgot, that says if you look at if you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. So
Yeah.
that's the well, my thought process when I'm going into any of these websites or anything like that. I assume, you're going to be. I'm not going to assume security. I'm going to presume that you've been compromised or will be compromised, and then that changes my behavior instantly.
And so, do you recommend Have I Been Pwned for individual users?
Yeah,
Uh, yeah.
Troy's
So
Troy is a great guy. If you never met Troy Hunt, by the way, great guy from
awesome,
Microsoft.
dude.
Yeah, he's a very, very amazing guy. If for you guys you don't know what Have I Been Pwned, it's a website that actively receives breach information, and then they correlate and normalize the information, and then they just post not the information, but I think they post the actual flags and everything like that to say what was been stolen and who's it been stolen from.
So in we'll drop the link for Have I Been Pwned in the post so you guys can check yourselves. But I'll give you an example. Like the you know I just put my email in, and I've obviously I checked this quite a bit, and I've updated my passwords. But here's some of the hacks that my personal email has been involved in, which wasn't my fault, but these companies were hacked. I'm just gonna go read them off. AT&T 2021. I mean, AT&T, very large company. People know this. Park Mobile 2021. If you guys don't know what Park Mobile is, Park Mobile is a mobile parking app, so you don't have to use the parking meter. You can go on the web and get a parking spot, especially if you're in the Bay Area, within California too. I think it's out in New York and maybe Texas as well. Um, but this is just a parking app, and but it has my financial information and my email tied to it, right? Credit card information, all this stuff. They were hacked, right? Um, License plate as well, because you put your license plate in there. So, that information is now out there, right? Luxottica, which is a luxury eye brand, right? Date of birth, email addresses, gender, name, phone number, physical address, all lost in that breach, right? Concerning, of course, Twitter, 200 million accounts, December 2020. Um, you know, Bonobos clothing brand. So and this is a big one because email addresses, not just current password, but historical passwords. So a lot of people cycle passwords, right? They'll just change one number or, one character in their password. For example, you could do like my password 1000, and then when it becomes 30 days, you get 90 days, you got to change your password. You do my password 2000, right? And you just keep cycling through until you hit, I think it's 4 or 5, and you can reset, right? A lot of people will do that just to make it simple for them. Um, well, the historical passwords got hacked as well on that one. IP addresses in the Luxottica, partial credit card data was stolen, right? So now they have some financial information. So think about it: financial information, historical password, your IP address, phone number, physical address, and then your purchase history, right? And this is important because you can now build a behavior profile of the individual, and you can purchase things. You go look for individuals who purchased high dollar things, and you have all this information. You can now do um, you know, make assume their identity and make purchases of high value items, and it looks none the wiser to the system, right? Zynga back in 2019, and then Canva back in 2019. Canva is a very widely used platform for a lot of people. but geographic locations in Canada, email addresses, names, password, and usernames. So a ton of stuff there. Let's see what else. Ticketfly, which is also another app that a lot of people use for to get tickets. You get tickets. And that one was hacked, right?
Take a look at the website. It's called information is beautiful .net. Uh, there's a cool circle graph of all the major data breaches that have has happened. It's gotten so expansive right now that they can't list everything. So they list everything that is above 30,000 records or more. And so if you look at it, you see all these little circles that just light up the entire screen, and it is all over the place. And it's not just like these small little companies. You think about it, there's a lot of household names in there, like Anthem or eBay or JP Morgan Chase or Home Depot, Marriott, Facebook, Canva, Capital One, Twitter. It's not just one. It is a lot of these global household names that have had, incidents that has had information stolen from there. And, we can debate till we're blue in the face that it's their fault or not. But at the end of the day, it does not change the fact that that information is publicly out there
You guys can
for.
see I'm doing a screen share, but you guys can see here, um, you know, quite a few well-known names here. And, to your point, Facebook, 533 million. That's no small number, 200 million. Ticketmaster, 560 million. Um, but this is a great visualization, great website here. Kind of showing how it doesn't matter if you're a big organization, a small organization, you are at risk. So a lot of stuff there. And then I'll real quick, I'll share the have I been pwned as well. So this is the have I been pwned. I don't know if you guys see the
Well, they now have your email address too.
there we go. Too late now, but I mean, most of you guys probably have my email address anyway. But this is the website. Have I been pwned? But yeah, you just put your email address in there. You can see here. I've been hitting 12 data breaches, so obviously changing my password. Probably right after this podcast, I'll be changing my password again. But these are two great resources to check and see. Just your own personal cybersecurity. But I think it's important. It's kind of like you know, you have your fitness routine, you have your daily routine for or monthly routine for finances. Um, it's my opinion that a cyber hygiene routine is something that you have to do as well now, right? It's just something that you have to incorporate into your life with the amount of connectivity that we have across the board, both professionally and personally. It's just something you should be running every week, if not every day, to see there's been a breach, right? Now I know that there's, certain credit monitoring services do offer that as well. I think Experian has a service where, if you list your accounts, they'll check and see if you've been hitting a data breach. There's other services that will automatically check and inform you. Um, and I would always say to like anybody with children, unfortunately, children are big targets of this stuff too. And it's terrifying as a parent to know that your child's personal information or photos of your kid will get put out there or potentially manipulated to put you in a compromising position. So I would definitely be checking if you have children. I'd be monitoring what they're doing as well, because that's one of the big vectors is to exploit a children's technology to get information and get to the parents, right? That's a big tactic here as well. Um, and so, one thing I always tell guys is, and you shouldn't be doing this anyway, but don't let your children use your work computer, because that potentially leads to compromise of your work system as well, right? So, um, it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate reality of of our society, but that is something that does happen.
I think also the thing to be also be mindful to is, um, you know, your kids don't always know what's right from wrong.
Correct.
So their goal is to play Minecraft, but they get frustrated, impatient. They go look for some sort of Minecraft hacker mod, but it's a laser virus or something like that, and then they click and detonate on your work computer, and then poof, your work computer is compromised at that point.
Or
Your kid doesn't.
they want
Your,
free
your
Robux, as
yeah,
my kid likes to tell me,
yeah.
I want some Robux, Dad, and it's like, what? And then now, it's funny. It's like, okay, I don't want to give you any Robux, so they go try to find a site on how to get free Robux, right? And to your point, it's malicious software that's now taking over my phone or taking over my laptop. I should have just paid the $20 for the Robux, right? Because now I'm paying a lot more to get my info back and all that. But um, yeah, absolutely. So, but there are certain things you can do. Two resources we gave you. I mean, I think we're coming up on an hour here. Final thoughts for you, man, because this is definitely your wheelhouse. So, what are your final thoughts here?
Um, I think number one, if you do get if you're caught unprepared and everything, um, reach out. Just ask for help. Our team is always ready to help anybody out. We have people who we can engage to help with the recovery process, but ultimately, a ransomware is not the problem. Your problem is clearly an adversary, and it is usually a crime of opportunity, but it's also a crime of also being unprepared. It'll always catch you at the worst possible moment. I would also say too, if you're an invoke cyber insurance, definitely still bring us on board. We may not be able to do the investigation because these insurance companies have their insurance panels, but just a really quick note on that, because I know we talk about cyber insurance, but we're running out of time to talk about it. Understand that their duty of loyalty and duty of care is not to you; it's to themselves.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a good point. We were supposed to talk about this, so we'll just take a quick kind of tangent here. But um, understand similar to like health insurance, right? Or workman's comp insurance. Insurance companies have their doctors on the payroll. They have the people that they fund. Um, and I will be bold here and say that typically those doctors will look at your injury from the lens of the insurance company of what do they actually need to have to pay out, who was negligent, and can they waive the claim, right? Similar to cyber insurance, where insurance companies in general, their business model is to not pay, right? If they have to pay, that's not good for their business model. This is why people hate health insurance, and we saw what happened in December last year, right? The insurance companies are notorious. Cyber insurance is no different. If they bring a team in, an in-house team to do the forensics and everything like that, they will be looking to see if there was any negligence on part of the victim company, and if they don't have to pay, if there was something there. So um, if it's possible for you to use a third party that's not affiliated with the insurance company and you're able to do that, that I would say that's highly recommended. And that's coming from multiple CTOs that I've had conversations with about this over the last year or two, is a third party unaffiliated team like Josh's team is much more beneficial because they have loyalty to no one. They're just trying to solve the problem. They're not going to frame it any way. They're going to tell you what's wrong, or they should be telling you exactly what's wrong and how to fix it. And and it's should be unbiased, and it should be fairly neutral.
I'm also gonna say, even if the insurance companies bring in somebody, bring us on board, bring an independent third party on board to represent your interests. So this way, there is some pushback if they say, oh, you did this and this is like, well, hang on. You're looking at this pool of evidence right here. You're ignoring this pool of evidence also right here. And that gives you the ability to push back. So this way, don't get me wrong. The insurance company is going to, you know, do everything to get your business back on board. They'll have insurance responders and all that stuff. But it comes time to processing that claim and who pays for it. They very well may find a way to say, nope, you're on the hook for this. Here's the bill.
Yeah.
Granted, discounted, but still, it's a very large bill.
And that's a good clarifying point, and I don't want to trash insurance companies because they will help you get your business back on. That's part of the policy, and they will help you get access back. But um I haven't, and I've spoken to several CTOs, I haven't heard of one of the claims ever being paid out by cyber insurance. And I don't have the numbers on the stats in front of me. I don't know how many claims have ever been paid out by insurance, but it's also important to understand that other insurance companies like business insurance, and other liability insurance that you have to operate your business may require you to have cyber insurance, to get the other policy. So you may have to pay it anyway. But it's important to understand that, if you're counting on the insurance company to pay the ransom or pay the claim, I think the numbers show that that is not going to be the case. They'll help you get the business back, and that's important, and we'll give them credit for that. Absolutely. Um, but paying the ransom, paying the claim, probably not going to happen, you know.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of CISOs, CIOs, CTOs. They just accept the risks and say that's what cyber insurance is for. No,
Yeah, I think that's the wrong answer.
cyber insurance is for when you have an absolute catastrophic event that it overwhelms you. It is literally should be your final line of defense, not your first line of defense.
Correct.
And if you're doing that approach and model, I'm going to clearly say you're doing it wrong. Very, very horribly, horribly wrong. That means you're just, at this point, I call that clearly negligence. If not, sometimes I will boldly say, you know, criminally negligent a little bit too, as well, in some cases too. That's just a very wrong attitude to come into.
Well,
Um,
it's similar to, like, I'm just going to run an automated tool, and it's kind of on the same level. It's like you can't just assume that the insurance is going to cover it, then that you're covered. I think it's a safety blanket that a lot of people take, and ooh, I've got cyber insurance, but it doesn't. If you haven't read the policy clearly and yet you don't understand exactly what that policy is going to do for you, you can't live in the comfort zone there just because you have the insurance. It's not, and I would argue any insurance, there's going to be limits to what they cover, right? And this is coming from a guy who worked at an insurance company. I mean, I know that there are certain things that you're going to, yes, we are going to cover that unequivocally 100%. And there are certain things it's like, well, man, sorry, um, you're out of the policy. We can't cover that. And unfortunately, good, bad, or indifferent, those conversations are very unemotional for most insurance companies. They are very black and white. Like, this is what the policy says. This is what I'm covering. You're on your own for the rest. Sorry, you should have got the upgraded policy, right?
yeah, or what you wrote on your form as part of your insurance process.
Right.
You very small, like even if it's if they can find even a small hint of you omitting something or leaving something off, then proof. They will deny the entire claim. Again, they're in the business of themselves, and if they approve and pay off every claim, they go out of business.
Right. So they're going to be very selective about what they actually have to pay out. And that's true for most insurance companies, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful with that. I think that I've got cyber insurance, safety blanket that people like to throw out there. It's just not it's not as safe as people think. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've heard, and at least in my side, a little bit different from your side, Al, but at least from my side, I've heard businesses actually do getting payouts. But what happens is on the tail end, one of two things happens if they do get a payout. Is it's fairly absolute, black and white on this one. Is that number one, you don't get renewed. Essentially, you get canceled at the end of it because you costed them a tidy sum of money, a lot of money usually. And number two, the other one is if they don't cancel you and they decide to keep you, your rates are hiked up so
Yeah.
ridiculously high that you either pay it because you need to pay it because it's part of your business operations, or, and I say or, you can't afford it, so you have to go shopping around for some other, insurance company, but you're likely going to get, very similar quotes or slightly less in amount. But either way, you're just kind of in a very very bad predicament. Either way, you either or you reduce your coverage, which is just as bad too.
Yeah. So I mean, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't, almost, right?
Exactly, and it's just not it's not the place to be at all. So, anyways, final thoughts. Essentially, to do back to Al's point here, is that we have to be very very uh, prepared for it. And if you're coming from a mentality or thought processes, oh, my IT guys got it, or all I need is firewall and antivirus, you're just inviting for trouble. You're inviting trouble at this point. Don't be doing that. Like you have to think really hard in this day and age how creative a human being will do to achieve their goals. And when you accept that, then you start moving forward.
Yep. Absolutely. What else? Anything else?
I think that's about it, man.
Okay.
I can go on
Cool.
this. I can go on this forever because I've gotten so many phone calls over the years and heard stories of people like losing their businesses and everything.
Well, I would throw out there my little final thought is I would it's kind of cliche, but I'll say it anyway. But security is everyone's responsibility, right? Whether it's physical or cyber. Um, and I'll throw out lowest common denominator. You have to protect your organization for the lowest common denominator. You cannot assume that, especially if you sit in the CISO office or the CTO office, or even the CSO office, you can't assume that everybody is aware of all the threats and all the threat vectors that you're aware of because you deal with it every day. There's a lot of people out there who are just uninformed or it's just not part of their day to day. And so uh, training, education, all that stuff's important as preventative measures and keeping people informed of the threats out there and the threat vectors and ensuring that people understand that they are just as responsible for protecting the organization as the CISO's, office or the CSO's office or the CTO's office. I mean, everyone has to bear that responsibility, right? Because these type of payouts, these type of attacks, they impact everyone, right? I mean, financially, not only the customers, but the employees, the business may have to shut down, the business may have to, reduce bonus payments or, they can't expand or scale as much because they have less money to play with now because they've had to pay off ransoms. So, understand that.
Yeah, I would say in one step further, security is everyone's responsibility, but it's not the responsibility of just the people around you or the company or who you work for. But understanding that what you do could potentially impact other businesses because data has a tendency to want to be shared and get out.
Yep.
So when you accept that, and understand that your decisions or your development decisions it could potentially impact other people at other companies or organizations, or keep going down the line. You realize there's always going to be a ripple. Like throwing a rock into a very still pond. You just see the ripples go everywhere in the entire lake.
Yep.
All right, Al. So I think, wow, this is a record session. Well, not really, 55 minutes.
It's not bad.
Yeah. All right, folks. We'll call it here for this week. Obviously, this is a subject that's near and dear to our hearts. Maybe we'll revisit another point because ransomware keeps evolving, but the root causes never really change much. So as a prior refresher. But anyways, we'll call it here for this one. Oh, if you are going to be in Las Vegas in 2 weeks for Black Hat, DEF CON, and or any of the hacker summer camps, say hello. We'll be at the various parties floating around at some point. Definitely we'll be at the Red Team Village at DEF CON, so come say hi. So all right. I think that's all on our calendars, right, Al, for travel?
I think so. Yeah, I think I'll be there for probably one day. Not sure exactly which one yet, but probably put that out there next week on which day I'll be around. But yeah, definitely would love to meet you guys, talk to you guys, get your perspectives. Really enjoy the feedback and the engagement. So
Yeah. All right, folks, take care and stay safe. And, well, may you live in it, may you have an interesting week ahead.
absolutely.
Cheers, guys.
All right. Bye bye, guys.